Good evening. Thank you everyone for joining us for the Western Corridor Virtual Open House live Q&A. We will get started in just a minute. I think everything is live. I will turn it over to Mila to go through the presentation first, and then once she is done, we will introduce the panelists that we have for the live Q&A, and then get into the actual Q&A portion after that. So Mila, whenever you're ready, I will advance the slides for you.
Thank you, Head. Good evening and welcome to our Western Corridor Virtual Open House live Q&A session. My name is Mila Vega and I'm with the City of Raleigh Transportation Department Transit Division. I will provide a quick overview of the corridor, the current status, and then we will open it up for questions and answers. Next slide. So we will get to the introductions at the end of the presentation. I will cover the slides that I currently have prepared, and we will open it up. After the introductions, we'll open up for questions and answers from the audience. So just a quick reminder, we always like to start with our presentations with this slide to kind of talk about the origins of the BRT program. It came out of the Wake Transit Plan, and Wake Transit Plan was developed after a successful half-cent sales tax referendum back in 2016. It is based on 4 big moves, and big move number 3, where it talks about frequent, reliable urban transit. This is what BRT program lives, along with other high-frequency transit services that run 15 minutes or more frequently. Next slide. So again, what is BRT? It's a bus-based service that has some very unique characteristics like branding, enhanced stations. You can see an image of a model of a BRT station model that we currently plan for our system. It also has upward fare collection. It has a very long span of service. We are looking at the system that will start its operation on weekdays at 4 a.m. and will run until midnight, and on weekends at 5:30 a.m. and until midnight. So a very large span of service, high frequency, every 10 minutes during peak hour. Dedicated lanes, you can see on this image, dedicated bus lane is designated in red color, and specialized vehicles. We are currently looking at using 60-foot articulated vehicles that run on CNG for our BRT system. So we have a total of 4 different projects in our BRT program. All of them start in downtown Raleigh and go east, west, north, and south. Eastern Corridor, the one that runs along Newbern, is the most advanced. It's moving into final design, and it received a federal grant back in December to implement the project. Western and Southern, they're moving on parallel tracks, and we will be focusing today a little bit more on Western, to kind of go into the details of where the project is. And then Northern Corridor is the 4th. We will be doing a little bit more planning work on it to better define the alignment and to better define the service area. So this is a map of the Western Corridor. It starts in downtown Raleigh at the Go Raleigh facility, and then follows Western Boulevard, bypasses NC State University, bypasses some of the parks. Then you can see that there is a dashed line that will require a new roadway extension. This extension has been as an adopted roadway project within the city of Raleigh for many, many years, several decades. But we will be adding that extension in order to advance the project. Then it goes into Town of Cary jurisdiction on Town Cary Boulevard. Carytown Boulevard, and then goes up Maynard and takes Chatham Street into downtown. So this corridor is approximately 12 miles long. It will use a mix of dedicated bus lanes and mixed traffic. It will be supported by transit signal priority at key intersections. Next. Western Boulevard Corridor Study, we conducted this study, and we have Danya Sandeep with Urban Studies. She will she was managing the corridor plan for this project, and she can go more into the study itself and into the some of the deliverables, where the report is, and when the audience, when the public is going to be able to review the deliverable. There's also a transit-oriented development precedents book associated with that. So I will not go into too many details, and I hope that Dania will be able to cover some of that during the Q&A. Also, she can mention that there will be a dedicated Q&A session just for this study and the final deliverables and final report. So Dania can give a little bit more information during this Q&A session if there are audience members who are interested in learning more about this project. Next. All right, so where we are right now, we're currently working on 0 to 30% design, and we are at approximately 5% level of work. 0 to 30% design will take us about 20 months to complete, and it will include conceptual design work. It will include environmental work known as NEPA. I will be working on data collection. I'm sure you've seen lots of survey flags and received numerous letters that kind of talked about that. So we are in very beginning of this project, and where we are is we're looking at various runway options to see what could fit in the existing right-of-way, where we might need some additional right-of-way, just trying to mix and match to balance efficiency of the transit system with available space and also resources that it will take to complete the project. Next slide. So this is a high level timeline, and you can see some of the key milestones that we'll need to complete. Again, I just want to point out that this timeline assumes that we receive federal funding at some point of this process, because that is an essential component of the financial package for this project. So federal funding is required, but assuming everything aligns, we are looking to complete design and begin construction by 2024. So approximately 3 years from today, and construction will take approximately 3 more years. And the goal would be to have revenue, to have BRT service ready for operation in 2027. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about some system-wide considerations. We are looking at establishing a new brand for the system. You might have remembered that when I started the presentation, I said BRT has some unique components, and branding is one of those components. We currently have a name, and we have a Go Plus, and we have variations of a logo. You can see that this logo is very has very direct references to the current Go brand umbrella, like Go Raleigh, Go Carry, Go Triangle. So this is a play on the existing brand to make sure that users and riders and new riders, they understand that this system is part of the overall family of products through the Wave Transit Plan. Next. Also, we are working on stations, and we are currently gathering feedback on station design as well as branding. So I just want to remind everyone to go ahead and take a survey. We have 3 available, but for stations, we have models that will be placed along the entire system. There are components that are uniform to make sure that no matter where it's placed, whether it's along Newbern or Western, current riders, future riders, they can all understand that that's part of the same BRT system. But we're also trying to be mindful of opportunities to customize and create, inject some maybe local flavor, or maybe inject some art into stations to bring a little bit of a unique spin to each location. We're also looking at sustainable features like solar lighting, for example. We are looking for feedback, as I mentioned, on station design. There are a couple of elements specifically, canopy design, single slope or double slope. You can see the double slope where it curves up a little bit, and lighting options. You can see a couple of different options. One is a little bit more standard, and then one that has more of a dynamic design integrated into the lighting. As we are advancing with lighting, we are mindful of light pollution and balancing that with a need to create safe, well-lit spaces. So we might be working on balancing the amount of light with allocation. Art is another important component for the entire system. Currently, we have Dare Coulter, who's working with us. She's working on the system-wide level to identify blank canvases, empty canvases for art integration. Where could art go in the station? Maybe it's a back panel, maybe it's a portion of the multi-use path. So not just the stations, but other components of the BRT system. So she's looking at that on a system-wide level. Specifically for New Bern, there's working with communities to gather some ideas for art and to inspire future art creation. So there's also some questions, and please provide your feedback in the survey so that we can start integrating these ideas. While there's predominantly focusing on art ideas for New Bern currently, but she's also very interested in gathering this type of information for other quarters, so then we can get head start and start integrating some of those ideas early on. So I think that wraps up the presentation. Again, please take surveys. You'll have multiple surveys, multiple opportunities for feedback. And at this point, I think Head will stop sharing the screen. We can go into the introductions of the panelists, and I will let each panelist introduce themselves. Head, if you want to help me mediate the introductions, moderate the introductions, I'm sorry. And then we will jump right into Q&A.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you, Mila. So yeah, I'm gonna try to bring up my other screens to monitor the public meeting on public input so that I can see the chat and all the other things that are going on. So while I try to do that, I'm going to go ahead and start the introduction of the panelists. I'll start with myself first. My name is Het Patel, Senior Planner for City of Raleigh, Department of Transportation, Transit Division. I'm working on the BRT program, the BRT team with Mila, and we'll go through the introduction with the city staff first, and then we'll go to our consultants. So we'll go to Danya next.
Hi, thanks, Het. Hello to everyone. Also to those of you who are tuned in tonight, thank you for joining us. My name is Danya Sandeep. I'm one of the senior open designers with the City of Raleigh, Planning and Development with the Open Design Center team. And I had the pleasure of project managing the Western Boulevard Corridor Study, which is actually the planning phase because we have a little overlap between the planning phase that's just kind of wrapping up, and then with the design phase that the rest of the team is more involved in, and which is more time sensitive. So I'm here today to answer any questions you have, and turn it over to Boris next.
Yeah, let's see Ben, if Ben has been able to join back. He was having some technical issues. So, oh, there he is. Ben, let's introduce you first.
Sure. Hi, my name is Ben Poseel. I'm with the City of Raleigh Roadway Design and Construction Division. I will be working as a project manager for the city, working towards 100% design from roughly 30% on and into construction. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ben. Let's go to Greg now with WSP.
Hi, excuse me, I'm Greg Sauer. I'm with WSP. I'm the project manager on the consulting side for Western BRT, taking it from 0 to 30% design, going through environmental clearance, as well as the federal grant application, which Mila hinted at earlier.
Thanks, Greg. And then last but not least, our municipal partner with the town of Cary, Kelly.
Hey, good evening. Apparently I'm experiencing some technical difficulties as well. I turned off my camera earlier during the presentation, and now it is not working. So I have my background instead. But I'm Kelly Blasey, and I'm the transit administrator with the town of Cary.
All right, thank you, Kelly. So we have gotten some questions in the chat before the meeting, but we also had a few preloaded questions. So I kind of want to start with one of those. And I think what I'll start with is, Greg, I think we've kind of had a lot of discussion about how BRT projects are implemented. Mila kind of identified some of the features. If you can explain in that 0 to 30% design phase where we're starting off for this Western Corridor now, at what points will we be making some of the decisions on the milestones for like that running way, you know, what type of BRT treatments to expect along the Western Corridor as we go into that early design phase?
Sure. So the first thing that we do is we'll start with more of like a planning level where we're really trying to just figure out, do we have the right locations for the stations? That's kind of the core of what we do. Danya and her group took some of that work and furthered that as far as where the locations are. And then my group, from a design standpoint, we started to lay out, you know, basically, how can we get a bus between these stations, recognizing that we have to balance everything with general purpose traffic. We are committing to having bicycle and pedestrian facilities along this entire length. So we're trying to figure out how to put all that together. Excuse me, but we're taking a block by block approach. So we're not assuming that one size fits all. And that's one of the things that I think is really nice about both BRT in general, but also this early design phase, is we have a lot of things to play with. So for example, along NC State, we may have one design concept where the buses are running on the curbs. We may have another concept where the buses are running in the middle. Excuse me. Right now, we're at about what we call 5% design, and it's very, very sketchy still. Stations are not completely locked down. We're just, you know, coming up with ideas for different running ways. The big goal for us is to get to 10% design. And when we say 10%, that's something that is sufficient enough to, you know, have confidence that the stations are nailed down, that the designs that we have will physically fit within the road or otherwise. But then most importantly is that we can start developing really good cost estimates that we have some confidence in and move forward. So about that time is when you'll start to be seeing more definitive designs. And that's going to be occurring over the next couple of months.
Thanks, Greg. I think one of the things that you mentioned there, and we have gotten some questions on this. So earlier this month, the city sent out survey notification letters, and that was tied to some of the environmental work and the preliminary design work that WSP is going to be doing. I'm going to start with Ben on this, and then Greg, if you want to add anything else to it, you can. But so, you know, can you, Ben, explain to our listeners what to expect when they receive those survey notification letters, and kind of can you provide more information on what that survey entails at the preliminary design level?
Sure. So we send those letters out. We try to send them out 30 days in advance of when the survey work will be performed. And it's for us to collect more information along the corridor for the design and to identify any environmental impacts. The city has the right to perform that survey work on property, but we prefer consent from property owners and try to identify any special needs with pets or fences at that time, so we can minimize impact. But right now it's for us to collect information for the design.
Greg, did you want to add anything else to that at the moment?
No, excuse me. I think Ben covered it really well. This effort that you described is in concert with a sort of a traditional surveying effort that we've been going on for a while. So we're going to take that data where the physical points are and marry it with the information we get from the survey Ben described.
Okay, so we'll go to some of the questions that we received in the chat. And this chat was open, you know, prior to the meeting. So we actually got a lot of questions from one person, and they were kind of related to the same topic. So I'm going to start with Danya on this, and then we'll go to Greg, because I think both of you may have a little bit of something to add to it. But really, the essential points of the questions are along various intersections. There seems to be a need to provide for better bicycle or pedestrian crossings along Western Boulevard. Can you sort of, Danya, I guess, first from the Western Boulevard corridor study perspective, explain what the Urban Design Center looked at and what the study looked at for bicycle pedestrian accommodations or potential connections and missing gaps? And then Greg, you can add to it in terms of what we would be doing at 30% design and investigating those options and kind of coming up with some solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a great question to start with, because, I want to emphasize when we did the engagement and, initially took feedback from the community, one of the large voice and, a lot of comments and concerns about connectivity and pedestrian bicycle connectivity, especially along the corridor. And so one of the emphasis we had when we started out with the recommendations and analysis was, keeping that in mind, and how can we look at the corridor and the fact that the BRT is coming, what are those additional infrastructure opportunities we can do to align with the coming BRT investments. So what we looked at was we walked down, we took analysis down the corridor, and we walked down, we created 6 character zones. So as we move away from downtown all the way connecting to, the edge of Raleigh, we had 6 character areas. We looked at each specific zone and looked at the existing conditions. And of course, WSP team, the consultants had done a great inventory of the existing conditions and the infrastructure as it existed. So we took that and worked closely with our transportation planning group to analyze what are those missing gaps, right? And what are the improvements or intersections needing critical improvements, because that is a huge challenge, for a corridor that's being serving primarily to move cars, to make that transformation into something more walkable, more safer, is going to be challenging, and it has to be intentional. So in our report and recommendations, you would see key intersections where we have identified where we need to intentionally go in and look at redesign or upgrades. They are called out. We have looked at specific intersections like Fulton Bridge, Ash Avenue, where we felt that there is opportunities for potential redesign. And I guess more holistically, if you look at the corridor, we have recommendations, all of which fall into one of the major themes, which is multimodal connectivity. So we have recommendations specifically for new street connections, new bikeway, a lot of bikeway connections, and also greenway connections. And the idea behind all of that is, how can we take a more holistic look at what's going to come to the BRT corridor, and how can we make that more successful by providing enhanced connections across to the key destinations or to the surrounding neighborhoods. So do look out for those specific recommendations in the report. We would love to hear if we have missed anything, or if there's something we totally didn't look at. We'd love to get your feedback, because we intend to, when the report goes to council at some point, we would also associate that with the comprehensive plan amendment package, where we would ideally like to adopt some of those recommendations into the city comprehensive plan document. I'll let Greg add any additional details if you're looking at as part of the BRT design itself. If Greg, you want to add to that.
Sure. So one of the really nice things about a BRT project, and again, I mentioned this earlier, is we go block by block. So that allows us to look at these specific issues that Danya was pointing out, and her group has been so great at identifying and coming up with some other ideas. We are always looking to have connectivity. And in fact, along the Western corridor, we're going to have a multi-use path and a sidewalk along the entire length. And we're also, of course, looking at what are the connections on side streets and things like that. The monies that are available for BRT for our project have to show a direct nexus to transit. So there is a limitation of what this project can do from a other improvement standpoint, but we are making a real big effort to coordinate with all the other improvements that are going on, Town of Cary, City of Raleigh, NCDOT, et cetera, to try to package these and make them work in concert.
Okay, thanks, Greg. So I'm going to go to one of the more recent questions that we just got, and I'll start with Mila here, but Kelly, if you have anything else to add on this from the Town of Cary perspective, feel free. The question is it really necessary to have a BRT line along Western Boulevard, considering major projects pulled out like Wegmans and IKEA I don't see any need for BRT since we have Go Triangle lines there already.
This is a good question. It comes up from time to time. So why do we need BRT? Why are we even doing this project? So all this started again back in 2016 with the half cent sales tax referendum, and then the Wake Transit Plan. And the big reason why, I think one of the opening statements in that document is our region is very popular and it's growing very fast. People are moving here every day. You know what the average we planners use 60, 70 people a day. That means more people, more cars, more demand, and more pressure on infrastructure. So thinking ahead and keep in mind the Wake Transit Plan is a 10-year plan. Right now, I think it's the time is 2030, basically, to build out the current plan. So it's a very long-term vision. It's really being proactive and thinking ahead, knowing that this area is growing, knowing that more people want to be here. So unless we do something more sustainable and provide alternative solutions, the same Go Raleigh or Go Triangle, Go Cary buses will be stuck in the same traffic as anyone else. Another important consideration, and Greg kind of talked about that, and feel free to add more, is BRT is not just a bus in its dedicated lane. BRT is a multimodal system that provides enhanced pedestrian accommodations, enhanced bicycle accommodation. So it's truly turning a corridor that's suburban in nature, probably not very safe for pedestrians and bicyclists, and trying to make it a more urban, more walkable, more bikeable, fill in those gaps in the infrastructure and give a choice whether to travel by bus, bike, car, and anything else. So it's truly a revisioning process for the entire corridor, not just swapping out one bus for another. Greg, feel free to add anything from your experience of what other benefits that BRT brings to the area.
Sure. I think, excuse me, one of the more important pieces of the BRT is that it provides reliability. So unlike some of the bus services that were mentioned earlier that have, not quite as frequent, and even when they come, may come early, may come late, things like that. BRT is very reliable and it has a very set schedule, once every 10 minutes, once every 20 minutes, things like that. So it starts to become something that's very easy to incorporate into your normal life. You don't have to worry about a schedule. You know that there are places that you live, work, and do recreation along the corridor, things like that. And so what you'll start to see is there's a real big market for people who want to live along a corridor like this, and are going to start to self-select. So you see a lot of people from the other, some of the other areas. So Apple, for example, is coming in. They've got a lot of staff that have been living in the Bay Area, for example, where transit is everywhere. So there's starting to be more and more expectation of having these types of options. And just, again, it is something that will allow you to change how your lifestyle, your behavior is. And that's a pretty transformative thing to have out there.
Kelly, would you like to add anything from the town of Cary perspective and some of the development that's occurring or planned?
Sure. So I guess I would just add that, even though there have been some businesses that have had plans to be included in these developments along the corridor that no longer plan to be there, the developments are still happening, and so other businesses will be part of these developments. So just because Wegmans or IKEA aren't going to be part of those initial plans, the developments are still happening. We are still bringing in new businesses to be part of that work. Epic Games has made the announcement about the Cary Town Center property, and as Greg mentioned, there are a lot of people that rely on transit and are used to having transit in other areas that they have lived. And so I think it really makes the area a big draw for those larger corporations to come in when there's a transit system such as this that's already being planned for the area.
Thank you. Kelly, I guess, just kind of a follow up on that. Do you want to, talk about from the Wake Transit Plan perspective? I think there are projects that are happening in the town of Cary as well. Is there anything that you'd like to highlight and how that kind of ties into the Western BRT corridor?
Sure. So we have several projects that we've been working on as part of the Wake Transit Plan. We implemented new local service in January, and so that's bringing service to new parts of Cary that haven't had access to fixed route service before. And as part of the BRT planning, making sure that we're providing those connections for the local service with BRT as well. We're also improving a lot of our existing bus stops, so making sure that we're increasing ADA accessibility standards throughout the town in preparation for the expansion of service. And then, of course, we're also planning for the Downtown Cary Multimodal Center, which will serve as the terminus for the Western Corridor BRT.
Okay, perfect. I think I will start with this next question with Greg, but and then maybe follow it up with Mila. I guess we have a question about what kind of demand model are you using for forecasting? And I know, we look at ridership quite a bit, Greg, and we have a model that the FTA has that we have to utilize. And initially in the 2016 Wake Transit Plan, these corridors were identified because of a certain level of ridership that already existed. Can you just explain what goes into some of our modeling efforts?
Sure, yes. So FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, has their own ridership modeling program. It's one that everybody across the nation uses. So it's a, quote, level playing field and tries to, normalize maybe different activities in different areas. But essentially what it does is it uses population employment data as well as journey to work data from the census. And this looks at where you begin your trip, your house, where you end up working. And then also look at what the current mode share is. And when I say mode share, that's the different types of vehicles or ways that you can get to and from different places. So they'll take that information, as Het said, looks at sort of what's out there existing today and what are the changes in population employment that we've seen, not when I say we, that the federal government has seen in other places where a project like BRT has come in. And then it'll introduce different factors to kind of grow the ridership potential or look at people switching off of one local service to another. Excuse me. So one of the things that's really good is some of the projects that Kelly was mentioning, very large, Epic, Fenton, et cetera. Those aren't there today, right? So we don't really know how somebody would utilize that, how that would increase. But because we have databases and information from across the US, we can do some future forecasting, get a handle on what that might look like. And that's sort of how we're doing it. Ridership forecasting is a very, very much an art. There's some science in there, but there's definitely some art involved. So the other thing is we look at engineering judgment and planning judgment from individuals who have experience over the years.
All right. I think the next question will go to Mila on this one, and this was from earlier today. What is the plan to integrate BRT with potential commuter rail? Fingers crossed. And I think this is one that, it kind of resonates in terms of overall connection of the transit network that was identified in the Wake Transit Plan and how the overall system may be built out.
Commuter rail is obviously one of the big projects that is included in the Wake Transit Plan. So from day one, there was this vision of having those projects complement each other. Go Triangle is the lead agency on this project, and they are working through some pre-planning feasibility level work to better understand the project, what it could look like, the service area, maybe frequency. We are constantly communicating with between two teams to make sure that we know how we can help both projects succeed and support each other. BRT and commuter rail, they serve quite different ridership models, and Greg can probably go a little bit more into that. But with BRT, it's more of an urban movement, shorter trips. With commuter rail, it's a model that's more focused on park and ride facilities, high distance trips. So it's serving a different market base within the transit industry. So this project is definitely, they are moving on different timelines, and commuter rail is a very complicated project, requires a lot of coordination, numerous partners at the table, and Go Triangle is working very hard on bringing all of this together. But as we are advancing them all, the goal is to ensure that they support each other, but do not compete with each other. And I know Greg or Kelly or anyone else, if you guys want to add anything.
No, I think you really hit it on the head, which is the travel markets are different. So the commuter rail is just that. I mean, it's called commuter. So it's really intended for individuals the beginning of the day and the end of the day to get to and from work. Bus rapid transit, excuse me, allows for all different types of trips throughout many different parts of the day, going to all sorts of different locations, again, home, work, recreation, shopping, etc. So it's just a little bit different of what you're trying to achieve with the different modes.
Okay. A new question just came in, and I think I'll start with Danya on this, but I guess Kelly, if you have anything else to add, you can. So are there any areas of the corridor that you see really benefiting from BRT, and what are the hopes for new development in these areas? And I think this kind of goes with a lot of the urban design centers, Western Boulevard corridor study work and land use kind of recommendations that are coming out of that. So Danya, I wanted to start with you, and then we can see if Kelly has anything to add from town of Cary perspective.
I mean, that's exactly what we hoped that our study would do, right? Looking at opportunities that this BRT investment is going to bring, and how we can leverage on those opportunities by getting ahead of the game and better planning and shaping that before it happens. So ideally, if you ask, I think we are looking at really transforming the entire corridor in some ways, from more of an auto-centric or, automobile serving to more of a multimodal corridor that could be exciting. It could have, supporting transit, but also mixed uses, have active, vibrant station nodes where you could have mixed uses, more of a pedestrian scale, walkable amenities. So essentially what we envision is the transformation is actually going to happen, for the entire corridor. Now, given that there are certain segments of the corridor where we think redevelopment opportunities may be limited, such as the frontage along parks in front of Dix Park, or likewise the NC State campus, because a lot of that is controlled by large entities and we don't. But where we essentially see where private property owners have the opportunity really to assess and think how they want to be part of this is transformation. And I always say the plan provides recommendations on, urban design opportunities. Our larger focus was on the right-of-way, the public realm, where we have better control of, looking at right-of-way access opportunities, infrastructure upgrades that can capitalize on the ongoing BRT investments. But where I want to emphasize is, this transformation cannot happen overnight, and it's not going to, it's not going to happen if it's cities solely responsible for it. What it takes really is all of the private, private sector, as well as potential public and private partnerships that can, come together really in a more incremental way over time. To help with that transformation and making, the effort to implement some of those recommendations. So I would say it'd be great if we could get that vision going, but I would say we see a lot of opportunities from government on moving west into, getting into going towards Cary. I think, between downtown and Gorman, a lot of opportunities for, improvements on the right of way. But when you talk about private development, there's opportunities, moving west from Gorman. We see already a lot of transition happening, right beyond Blue Ridge and, that segment. And then one thing you want to keep in mind is that the new extension, the Western Boulevard extension, is a whole new opportunity, because we have always planned for that as a street in our transportation plan for several decades, and now that we know that BRT would also be a part of that, here's an opportunity for us to think and really plan ahead. How can that new street, be shaped in a way where it can actually plan for a true transit-oriented scenario where, right now we don't have that street. So it might be the first opportunity we have as a city and as a region to plan for a truly transit-oriented district or zone with that new extension. So I think that's what I have top of my head. But unless Kelly, do you want to talk from the town of Cary perspective?
Sure. So I would say, the Cary Community Plan, which is the comprehensive planning document for the town, was adopted a few years ago, and it really anticipated the inclusion of bus rapid transit in our area, and had a goal of really setting the stage for transit-oriented development along the corridor. And so areas along the corridor, which also include special planning areas in downtown Cary and in the Eastern Cary Gateway, have already been identified for higher densities to support transit. In addition to that, the town is joining the city of Raleigh in applying for a transit-oriented development grant, a planning grant later this year, which we think will provide more precise guidance on station level transit-oriented development planning. So the corridor, the routing of the corridor in Cary was selected because of a lot of the development that is already occurring, but also recognizing that there are areas of opportunity for even more development. And so we're looking forward to working on that plan with the city of Raleigh and seeing what opportunities can become available.
Mila, do you want to add anything to the TOD grant? I know, I guess if anyone is interested in the level of work that is planned for that, if and when the city and town of Cary are successful in getting the grant, would be very similar to the station area planning work along New Bern Avenue that is about to get started, that is led by the city's planning department. So if anyone's interested in more details on that, definitely check out that project itself.
Yes, that's a good suggestion. There will be a lot of work that will be happening, and New Bern will essentially create the framework and the template for how it will play out in other quarters. So definitely something to keep an eye on and stay engaged. Thanks for bringing that up.
So Greg, I think this was brought up in Danya's comment, and it was a question that came in earlier on. So I'm going to go back to it. The Western Boulevard extension, which is a planned new roadway, that has been on the plans for some years now. I guess currently in the sketch level design, can you just explain at a high level what we would expect the cross section of the Western extension to be?
Sure. So let's see, starting from the outside, moving in, there'll be bicycle and pedestrian facilities, likely a sidewalk on one side of the street and a multi-use path on the other. This particular area is very wide from a right-of-way standpoint, so we might do multi-use path on both sides. We'll see. Then within the roadway itself, there'll be one lane for general purpose vehicles heading in one direction. There'll be a planted median that separates that general purpose lane from dedicated bus lanes that will be in the median themselves. In the center of the roadway, another median to buffer, and then another general purpose lane. So for cars, just one lane in each direction. For buses, one lane in each direction, but physically separated from where the cars are to maintain speed and reliability.
Okay, thank you. So Ben, I guess, what Greg just described is a running way option where BRT is running within the median and is separated from automobile traffic. I think one of the things that a lot of people are interested in is, at BRT stations, how do people actually access those stations? So from an engineering perspective, I think we have some solutions. If you can just kind of explain what those entail to allow people safe access to BRT stations.
Sure. For the most part, any of the stations that are located in the median will have crosswalks and to get access to those medians. And just really where they're located and positioned depends on the type of signalage and on how that is plays out. But I think a lot may have to be determined on exactly where that plays out in relation to a signalized intersection with another intersection of a roadway, which will further be evaluated, I think, as design progresses.
All right, cool. So I don't see any new questions that have come in the last couple minutes. I'm going to go back. I know, Mila, during the presentation, we had a slide on the Western Boulevard corridor study. We do have a little bit of time. Danya, I want to give you just a couple minutes if you want to put in a plug for when the live Q&A is for the Western Boulevard corridor study specifically, and sort of what the study's next steps are. I know we have the draft out for public review, but just kind of highlighting when we may be done with that project.
Yeah, so I think first off, we just released the final report, I think as of this morning. So, you know, the promotions just started. So if many of you watching may not have seen it yet, but we are very excited to get to this phase. Again, you know, if you recollect, it's a process we started back in 2019 and kind of, you know, and unfortunately we had a great kickoff and then we ran into the pandemic situation, but we really want to take the opportunity to thank those of you who have continued to show your interest, you know, stay engaged, gave us a lot of feedback at our virtual round last fall. And so we are now wrapping up into the final phase. So the report just released, we are going to open it up for comments. And there's also an online survey specifically, you know, asking you for feedback on the report and recommendations. So that's going to be active till online and available till June 14th, about a month's time. So urge everyone to take a look at that. Again, a lot of the, you know, the recommendations were driven by what we heard were issues you all noted, whether it was multimodal connectivity or, you know, so we hope we captured all of that, what we heard from you. And so with that, I want to say we have a focused Q&A session we are planning to host, and we're tentatively looking at May 25th. And you can see, you know, confirmation details and how to tune in on our project website. But what we're hoping is that will give you all some time to review the document, the recommendations, and really get back to us. So we hope to have our entire design team on board, along with our key partners from transportation, and, you know, transit, and as well as, I guess, sorry, I think it was Parks and Transportation. But so we're hoping that you have an opportunity to review and get back to us. What I do want to say is that, you know, the recommendations largely fall into 4 categories. We have 4 major themes, which is multimodal connectivity. I talked a little bit about that already. Then looking at transit-oriented development opportunities. Someone brought that question up again. And we did talk about 4 catalytic TOD sites that are in the corridor where we think it would hugely benefit the entire corridor to apply some, you know, additional thinking and how we can support the city's overall goals. Then we have what we call the public realm enhancement. So that is a lot of the focus on the report is on that, looking at right-of-way improvements and how we can enhance overall, you know, the existing right-of-way, the public spaces, integrate placemaking elements. And the goal is really to ensure that a transit user at some point is also going to be a walker. You know, you have to get from walk to a station, or you have to bike or walk to a station. How can we enhance that experience for the user so we can encourage more ridership than what we see currently? And then the last theme is environmental sustainability. We talked about how we want to take a holistic look and encourage more sustainable practices because there are some ecologically sensitive areas that this corridor traverses. And so how can we, you know, help and more sustainable growth and development into the future? So those are the key highlights of the report. So do stay tuned in. And the next process, what we intend to do is after the public input, we will make tweaks and updates to the report, and we then would follow the typical process of taking it over to council for referral to planning commission, and then planning commission, once planning commission reviews and makes a recommendation, we go back to council and public hearing. So That's the usual process. So there will be ample time, and we anticipate that to happen later in early fall this year, sometime in August or later. But there will be ample opportunities between now and then for, to give us feedback, to tell us if you like or if we missed anything. We would love to hear back from you all. So I would say, don't forget to check out the report and the survey online. We look forward to hearing and getting your comments and feedback.
All right, that sounds good. Again, I don't see any new questions that have come in. So I guess I'll go back to something that was in the presentation. And Mila, you can start off with this, and Kelly, if you want to add anything, you can at the end. But I think in general, we've gotten questions often about what the BRT stations will look like, what type of amenities to expect, can I charge my phone while I'm waiting for the bus, that sort of thing. So if you want to address, where we currently are in that station design process, we are looking for some feedback that you mentioned on the slides, but where we're kind of headed in the next, 6 months period.
I think you can answer this question just as well as I can, so you can continue. Yeah, I'll jump in and feel free to add, Head. I know you also is involved managing the Southern Corridor. We have several models for stations, and as I've mentioned, we are giving different considerations to the context of where the station is placed. For example, if we have an urban location, we are trying to make sure that this station does not create so many barriers that people cannot flow through comfortably. We're trying not to create visual barriers, movement barriers. So they'll be a little bit more open. And those ideas actually came from Urban Design Center as we first started to envision some of those designs without even actually knowing the format. We kind of knew how we wanted to have them function. As we advance in the corridor, maybe go outside from downtown a little bit, placements of stations being adjacent to the curb or stations being in the median. So complete opposite to what we did in the urban environment, where we have stations that are very open, very easy to flow. Stations in the median are very protected. There are more visual barriers, there are more physical barriers to protect people from traffic around them, to make sure they're comfortable, to make sure that they can safely get to stations, wait, and not feel that they basically sit in the middle of the roadway. So design becomes, I guess, harder and more closed in as you go away from urban environment into more suburban settings. We are looking at different styles for canopy. The survey is open for lighting. Looking at environmental sustainable features, maybe sourcing local materials, or making sure stations are solar ready. There will be charging ports, so you can charge your phones, even though you won't be at a station for more than probably 5 to 10 minutes max at a given time. But we know that when the phone is dying, that every second you just want to plug in to give it a little bit more juice before you get on the bus. So there will be lighting, there will be security cameras, there will be emergency phones, so people can feel safe and know that they can, have, safe, and they can get help if they need to. So there will be also seating and coverage, where I think we're currently looking at 80% coverage, and Head can correct me if I'm wrong, but 80% coverage for the platform. So essentially most of it will be under a roof, under a canopy, and there will be a small area where, say, if it's a nice sunny day and somebody wants to sit in the sun, they can still have that option, but most of it will be covered to protect from rain. There will be windbreakers built into the panel, so if there's a windy day, somebody can just hide out there while they're waiting for 5-10 minutes to jump onto the next bus. I don't know, Head, if you want to add anything else. I know we have lots of features. I'm sure I missed something.
No, I mean, I think those were some good ones for the stationary or the station themselves. I think one of the things that I'm more excited about, or most excited about with the BRT, is some of our features that are related to the vehicles, and that 60-foot articulated bus that you mentioned, which allows us to have the opportunity to have bicycles on the buses instead of having, people having to get down from a station, put the bicycle in front of the bus. It allows for a more smoother offboarding onboarding process, where the people with bicycles can just get on the bus more easily. So I think that's something that I'm really excited about. We did get a few questions in the last couple seconds. So I'm gonna try to see if I can squeeze them in. We have 5 more minutes. Greg, I think this question can go for you first, or probably you can handle it pretty easily. Currently in the sketch level design, what areas are we expecting to be in the mixed traffic from a BRT running way perspective?
Sure. Excuse me. So we start in Cary, in downtown Cary along Chatham, between, let's see, I guess that would be Harrison and Maynard is most likely to be mixed traffic. There's a section between where, let's see, well, basically across the I-40 bridge that connects Cary to Raleigh. That's going to be mixed flow. There's only one lane in each direction through there. There's some potential sections in the Jones Franklin Western Hillsborough area, if you're familiar with that big triangle, but we're investigating that. Excuse me. And then from approximately South Saunders, where Western goes over South Saunders in a bridge, from there to Wilmington and MLK intersection would be mixed flow going across the bridges and through the interchange ramps. Excuse me.
Cool, thank you. I don't see any other questions. I guess I would like to end the meeting the same way we did in November. Mila, I think you had asked this question, but if everyone on the panelists one by one can just say what excites them the most about BRT, we can end the meeting that way. And I guess I already went first because I said the bicycles on buses, and the buses are something that I'm really excited about. So we can go to Danya next.
I would say, I think I'm really excited that it's actually happening. And, there's, for a long time, I think we've been planning and talking about, transit investments, for a decade or more. And it's really exciting to see that as a region, we have come together and, come to plan for and shape the future of our transit, which is going to be really, really critical as we see more and more growth, with each day. I mean, people are attracted to this region, and we want to be making sure that we can maintain and sustain the great quality of life that people are proud of. So I'm very excited that it's actually happening, and that there's hope, and there's, it's the right time, better late than never. So that.
Craig, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm really excited about the transformative properties that BRT can bring. The quality of life for those who are living along these corridors is going to increase dramatically. The level of access that they'll have, again, to recreate, to shop, to live, and to have a go to work is pretty amazing. So I always like to think about, a couple of travelers. So there's the grandmother in your neighborhood who who now is going to be able to take the bus by herself to go to her church, where she maybe previously had to have somebody come get her. There's somebody who maybe works at Wake Med, where we're going to have a New Bern connection, and now they can live in other places and still have that direct connection and have confidence that they'll be able to get there on time to their job. And in a case like Wake Med, where there's multiple shifts. So I could go on and on, but I really think that at the end of the day, your quality of life is very dependent upon where you live, where you work, who you interact with. And this is going to allow people of all possibilities to have new and exciting ways to live their life.
All right. Ben, do you have anything that?
Sure. Yeah. Just to echo what others were saying, just the connectivity that this will provide, and being a local resident of the area my entire life, just seeing how we're planning for the growth in the area, and just the access to get around our neighboring cities. It's exciting.
Kelly, and then we'll end with Mila so you can have the final say.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything that everyone's mentioned so far. I think specifically for Cary, I'm excited about the frequency of the service. Our local service right now, the highest frequency is at 30 minutes. And so to be able to provide service every 10 minutes is really going to change the look of transit in Cary. And just excited to be able to provide that access to people and see how it really impacts the development along the corridor and throughout downtown as well.
And I guess I'll close out the last minute. And I just want to say that it's very exciting to see the transformational transit plan that is being put in place. Wake transit plan, yes, today we're focused on BRT, but it has commuter rail, it has enhancements to regular bus services, bus infrastructure. It's a huge plan that when all pieces of the puzzle will come together, it will be truly transformational and will provide a lot of mobility benefits to this area. So it's exciting to see the partnership, the true regionalism, and definitely appreciate our partners working on this plan. Specifically today with the case of Western BRT's Town of Cary. It's going to be first multi-jurisdictional project and then followed by Southern Line. So just exciting to see that partnership, regionalism, and the big plan that will benefit this area.
Okay, so we're right at 7 o'clock, and I want to say thank you to all the panelists for your time and all the insight to the questions that we've received, providing some guidance and answers. Definitely continue to check out the virtual open house website. If you have any other questions, feel free to submit them online or take the surveys and provide feedback to all of the different things that we have out there right now. And again, thank you everyone for listening. Bye-bye.